Wow. Well, thanks for having me here. Can I see, where are the students? Are they all over the place? Stand up if you're one of the science fair students. That's awesome. That is very cool. You can have a seat, that's fine. I gotta tell you, I'm particularly impressed because as a kid, I could barely assemble a diorama. So the fact that you've got these projects and experiments is pretty impressive. So thank you guys for coming. It's great to have you here. So I'm going to try and get through my notes and some of the prepared slides as quickly as I can because I want to get to the Q&A portion sooner than later, and then I'm sure you all want to get to the drinking portion even after that. So we'll try and keep it brief. I also believe in Q&A because frankly, as much as I would like to stand up here and think that I can figure out what every one of you wants to know, I'm hopefully smart enough to know that that's not the case. So I'd rather have you be able to ask questions and we can dive in from there and let you decide what it is we talk about. So that said, let's begin. Before I talk about being an entrepreneur, I'm not going to give you a lot of facts and figures on Club Penguin or on Disney, or most of that stuff you can find online, and if you can't, then you can ask me afterwards. What I really want to talk about is to me what it means to be an entrepreneur, but even before we get to that portion, I'd like to start by talking about what I believe an entrepreneur is not. One of the reasons I want to start with what is not an entrepreneur is because time is so valuable, and frankly, if you fall into many of these categories, feel free to excuse yourself. You might as well. I just don't want to waste your time because I truly believe that everyone in this room has such a tremendous opportunity out there to really apply what is and what can be, and I'm excited about talking about that. So let's begin. Entrepreneurialism is not what you do, it's who you are. I can't tell you how many times I come across someone and I'll ask them, oh, what do you do for a living? And say, oh, I'm an entrepreneur. I go, okay, well, do you make any? Have you done it? What do you mean? To me, it's a little bit like saying, oh, hi, what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm creative. Oh, okay. Or what do you do for a living? I'm incredibly empathetic. It's like, okay, are you a counselor, a social worker? Like, how does that apply exactly? Entrepreneurialism is so much more than just a job title. I started my business before I even knew what the word entrepreneur was. My first business, I should say, not the Club Penguin one, my very first one. I'll talk about that in a minute. But the reality is, when I first started it, and even today, I could barely spell the word entrepreneur. And so, to me, it's more than just a title on a business card. It really is who you are and how you were built. I believe it is possible for someone to become an entrepreneur with enough discipline and enough work and enough effort, but it's a little bit like me saying I'm going to become a gymnast. I may end up competing and maybe winning some awards, but I'm probably not going to be heading to the Olympics anytime soon. I truly believe that most entrepreneurs don't know how to do anything else. Entrepreneurialism is not about pride. Being an entrepreneur does not mean you don't have to have a boss. I hate to break it to you, but everyone has a boss. Whether it's business clients or direct consumers, every business owner has a boss. Believe it or not, sometimes a human boss, or a single boss as a human, I guess they're all human, but not a robot, but an individual as a boss is far easier to work for. And some of you have experienced this. One of my business partners and former bosses, Dave Crisco, used to always say, life would be a lot easier if we could just fire all the clients. Then we could get so much more work done. If you don't like your boss, go get a different job. It's a beautiful place we live in a beautiful and amazing country where that is the case. You can go and do something different. But don't just call yourself an entrepreneur because you don't want to be accountable to anyone. Success rarely comes from a reaction away from something. More often than not, it comes in an effort to try and run towards something. Entrepreneurialism is not about greed. Being an entrepreneur does not mean you will be rich. Money and wealth at times may be a byproduct of entrepreneurialism in the same way that it can be a byproduct of just great hard work. But it shouldn't be the core value. If you chase the money, you will rarely catch it. And even if you do, you still may wake up one day miserable because money alone isn't worth it. I know countless entrepreneurs, passionate entrepreneurs, that may never be wealthy. Many of them live month to month just like everyone else. But they love what they do, and they wouldn't have it any other way. Entrepreneurialism is not about fundraising. The goal should never be just to raise money or to find a VC. I can't tell you how many times I come across someone and I'll say, hey, how's your business doing? It is amazing. Let me tell you, through the roof. Really, are you selling things? How's it? Oh, no. Well, we haven't made a dime yet, but we've just gone through our second round. We got another $2 million. It's through the roof. So, well, that's great. It's great that you've got what you need now. How are you doing with the business side of it? Oh, well, no, we'll get to that. Sometimes we set the bar at fundraising instead of at revenue or at profits, better yet. It's also a bit of a myth, and I apologize to those of you in this room. If you're a VC, just earmuffs for me for a minute, if you don't mind. But you don't need a VC to be successful. In fact, I would recommend with any venture, you should use at least some of your own money, preferably all of it. Not all of your money, but fund it entirely, you know what I mean. The moment you bring in outside investors, things change. And in fact, using your own money will also make you a lot more careful about how you spend it. It's always easier to spend someone else's money. I'm not saying investors are evil or bad. Here, you can take the earmuffs off this part. They simply add a complexity that isn't always required. We funded Club Penguin ourselves because we knew we were doing something different. We knew we wanted to approach Club Penguin as parents, first and foremost, and not necessarily as people who are trying to please investors and keep them happy and put together an exit strategy and so on and so on and so forth. I understand that sometimes that's not possible, and I know that certain ventures require large amounts of capital. It's fine. Just be sure you're incredibly selective about who you choose as an investor, just as you would choosing any other business partner in the world. And please don't confuse investments with success. Always be shooting for revenue, or better yet, for profits. There are two sides in the rise of the popularity of an entrepreneur. I know that it was only a few decades ago that people wouldn't put the word entrepreneur on their business card. On the one side, it's great to encourage people to follow their dreams and their passions, and it's great to live in a time where there is access to financial capital. And even more than that, emotional capital from friends and family who will be supportive about what you're trying to do. That hasn't always been the case. On the other hand, the rise of the popularity of the entrepreneur has brought out a lot of people who may just be chasing a fad or a certain financial outcome. The rush to Silicon Valley in this century is no different than the rush to Hollywood was in the last one. And yet the road to success is littered with people who declared themselves an entrepreneur for all of the wrong reasons. So before you quit your job and go start your next venture, take some time. Do some soul searching. Figure out if you are truly an entrepreneur and if you're willing to do what it takes. Great entrepreneurs and leaders are able to look in the mirror and ask themselves those really tough questions. So, now that that's out of the way, and hopefully I haven't offended all of you, only some, just joking, hopefully none of you, let's talk about what I believe entrepreneurialism actually is when you get right down to it. I believe entrepreneurialism is more about what and who. What do you love to do, and who do you love doing it for? Or who are you doing it for? You need to take the time to figure out what it is you love to do, what drives you. People always get so excited about building a better mousetrap or a brand new mousetrap. The reality is that in order to be truly successful, you have to start with a passion for catching mice. For example, and literally these are taken right off of the websites and other research I did. Larry Page and Sergey, we'll go with Sergey. Larry and Sergey at Google had a passion for creating a new way to rank web pages and create a more authentic, accurate search engine. Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon, had a passion to create a bigger bookstore than could ever exist in the physical world. It's kind of a cool idea. Did okay for him. Tony Heisch, the creator of Zappos, literally, and I quote, had a passion to deliver happiness to his employees and customers, to serve them better than anyone. And of course, with Apple, Steve Jobs has a passion to create the best designed end-to-end consumer experience. From the moment you set foot into a retail store, to using the hardware, unpackaging it in all of its beauty, to adding digital content that you're using throughout the day or throughout the week. You need to figure out what it is you love, and then have fun doing it. My first business that I ever started, and I looked for, I couldn't find my original poster I'd made on like my dot matrix printer. It took me like 400 years to print them out. But one of the chores I actually kind of liked as a kid was mowing the lawn. Now, I don't know if it was the empowerment that came from using power tools or the finesse required to perfectly edge around a flower bed. But I decided to do something more with it than just my own parents' lawn. So I made up these posters on my old dot matrix printer, and I went door to door. And I got a business loan from my dad. See, I did get funding, I guess. But it was my dad, so it was a partner I was willing to partner with on it. For $422, he loaned me $422 to go down to Home Depot and buy myself the most beautiful Lawn Boy, rear bag, self-propelled, easy mulching lawnmower. There it is. Well, that wasn't mine. That's a shinier picture of mine. But anyway. And so what I did is we went down to Home Depot, we picked up the lawnmower, and I literally took my lawnmower. I don't know why. Maybe I thought it was like a marketing tool. And I went door to door, and I'd give them a flyer, and it was $5 per lawn. And now I'm not that old, but even then, that was a pretty inexpensive lawnmower. But I was 11, so they thought, okay. So anyway, I got some customers, and the cool thing was my lawnmower with all of its 4 wheels, I was able to stack the gas can on top, or extra gas, the edger, or the trimmer, weed whacker, I guess, on top, and then I'd pull the edger behind me, and I would literally go around my neighborhood mowing lawns. Well, there was a little bit of a problem in that as people saw that there was actually a half-decent job being done for $5, my demand started increasing. Now, at the time, I'd found an old go-kart frame at a friend's house, and I was like, hey, do you mind if I use that? Because I want to try and rebuild it. He's like, oh, yeah, me and my dad said we'd rebuild it, and it never happened. You can have it. So I had this old go-kart frame, and I'd rebuilt this go-kart, even painted it like fire engine red, and it was beautiful, incredibly illegal these days because it didn't have a roll cage or anything. But anyway, and we went, and I used to drive it around to my friends' houses. Well, one day I got this idea because I had these extra parts lying around from my go-kart. One of them was an engine. So I went over to this welder friend of mine, and I said, listen, do you need a new engine? He's like, well, what do you mean? I said, well, it wasn't a friend, it was a neighbor. But anyway, he said, no, I don't really need a new engine. And I said, well, I need you to build something for me, and so I thought maybe I could trade you an extra engine, like edger engine, for what I need built. So sure enough, he ends up, I think he took the engine anyway, I don't know if he needed it, but he took the engine and he kind of smiled, and 2 weeks later I went to pick up my frame. I added a little bit of plywood to it, I added some wheels, and before I knew it, I was hitching up my brand new trailer to my go-kart. And so then, what I could do is now load up all of my stuff into my trailer, and I had it all in there, and I had my bungee cord for my gas can and everything else. And what I did was I was able to double my efficiency because half my time was spent traveling around. So then I went back to all those people who had offered to pay me and who I'd said no to, and I went back and said, hey, I can take the job now if you don't mind. And at $5 a lawn, I could fit in 4 lawns per day. I'd work for like an hour and a half or two hours, and I'd work 3 days a week. That's $240 a month for an 11-year-old, which was not a bad allowance. Now, I couldn't tell you today what it is I ever did with the money, because it was never about that. I was too busy having fun. Now, it didn't necessarily mean that I love mowing lawns, but I did love doing a good job. I loved driving my go-kart around. I loved making the neighbors laugh, because they would laugh every single time I'd go whizzing by with my little, it was low to the ground, and anyway, I even put a flag on it so that cars could see me. My dad wanted me to mention that part. He's like, don't tell them about the flag. Anyway. But even more than all those things, I loved knowing that the old widow down the street who couldn't afford a professional service wouldn't have to worry about getting her lawn mowed. And I had 2 or 3 people on my route who were like that.